Welcome back to Spiritwind. Spiritwind is a study group for spiritual adventurers, and we invite you to come along with us on our journey. We have a formal class, pretty informal really, every Wednesday at 5:30 at Unity of Auburn, and we discuss a new topic every month. So today we're going to review what we discussed in May and introduce our topic for June. So Rick, what did we study in the month of May?
Well, the title of the class was The Magical Jesus, and I got the idea from a book by Morton Smith called Jesus the Magician. Now, Morton Smith taught his history of religion and so forth at Columbia University and was educated at Hebrew University of Jerusalem as well as Harvard. So he knows what he's talking about. And the basic idea was that research into religions around the Mediterranean, around the first and second centuries before and after CE, they found that there were many God-men. That means men like Jesus who were conceived of God and a human woman.
So like the Roman gods and so forth.
Yeah, a number of those.
Right.
Like Hercules, for instance. A number of them. And they also had a number of very interesting similarities. For instance, many of them were born on December 25th, which made sense because it was the first day of the new year according to the calendar, the Julian calendar. That was the the winter solstice in the old calendar. And they do especially striking things to what Jesus did in terms of miracles, and that's what we kind of looked at.
So miracles as magic.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, what are some of the examples that you have found for
Okay.
that?
Well, we were told that these are in terms of miraculous births. We're told that Pythias, the mother of Pythagoras, who lived about 550 years BCE, was conceived of the specter of the ghost of Apollo with Pythia, his mother.
Oh, so the ghost of Apollo being the godlike person.
Right.
Okay.
God. So he was the son of the god Apollo and Pythia, the earthly mother. More than this, Graves tells us, another researcher, that Apollonius of Cappadocia, who was a contemporary of Jesus, and his disciple Damius testify that Apollonius's mother had been overshadowed by the supreme god Proteus, and therefore was also a god-man.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
And one more even is Ceres, the virgin mother of Osiris, claimed that he had been begotten by the father of all gods.
So this is in Egypt.
Yeah.
So all around the Mediterranean, we're finding these same stories.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Well, tell us more about Pythagoras.
Okay, well, Pythagoras, many people have heard of. He lived about 500 some years before Christ. But he was a mathematician. We get the Pythagorean theorem from him. But he was also a priest and a magician of a kind of a religious cult. And he was said to be able to perform miracles, including raising the dead.
Oh.
Asclepius, the son of Apollo, the Greek god of healing, was said to have healed the sick and raised the dead as well. And then when we get to Luke chapter 7, verse 11 through 17, there's a story told in the gospel where Jesus raised the dead. But then on the other hand, you'd think that's extremely unique that Jesus raised the dead, but Hippocrates, the father of medicine, is also said to have healed the sick and raised the dead.
So there were magicians before Jesus.
Right. And that's how they were referred to, as magicians. They weren't seen as faith healers or anything like that.
Right.
Because to the ancient people, they were doing magic, you know. In Mark 6, 30 to 44, we're told the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. And he does it with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And so he's able to feed these 5,000 people with that. Well, Apollonius of Tyana, who was another, as we've already mentioned, one of these wandering god men, was described as doing a miracle like Jesus, like his feeding of the 5,000. And a historian at the time named Celsus, who was not a Christian or a Jew, Gentile, tells us, and this is very interesting in light of what goes on today as magic. It says Celsus tells us that this was an illusion, quote, performed by many holy men.
Oh.
So, anyway.
So they tapped into the magic.
That was, it was like, you know, that was the proof you're one of these holy men or something, you know. Anyway, I wanted to say this just real quick. The time period we're talking about when all this is going on, it goes all the way from around 82 BCE to 529 CE. You know, so quite a long period of time. And during that time, a jurist by the name of Paulus wrote this. And this is around in the early 200s. So it's in that period between 82 and 529. He says, quote, "It is the prevailing legal opinion that participants in the magical art should be subject to extreme punishment, that is, either thrown to beasts or crucified. But the magicians themselves should be burned alive."
So this was during the Roman time, and they certainly wouldn't want anyone usurping the Roman
Power.
commandments.
Yeah. And that's what Jesus was doing,
Yes.
you know.
And so in order to get rid of anyone else who could perform miracles and magic and upstage the emperor, you just
Right.
get rid of them.
Right, exactly. So most Christians will confine themselves within the 2 covers of a Bible. That's all they're going to look at, and they see that book as being the only thing that's inspired. I, however, see a broader picture emerging from these different sources, and it is clear that Jesus was seen in his time as a miracle worker and a holy man. The 2 weren't in opposition in those days. They went together. And he is seen as, in his time, he is seen as the one who founded another, what they called in those days, mystery religions.
Oh.
We'll have to talk about that again sometime.
Okay, so we have multiple mystery religions that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that sounds like it was pretty interesting, especially identifying all these other magicians before Jesus and after Jesus that were doing similar things. So very interesting. Well, I think we'll wrap that up for the month of May, and we'll go into what we're going to be talking about for the month of June. So, what will we be studying in June?
Well, the class itself is called Buddha and Christ. And what we're going to be doing is look at two of the most famous founders. I mean, technically, neither one of them founded a religion, but because of the impact they made on the cultures they lived in, religions grew from them, you know, and that is Christ and Buddha. And I want to look at where they're similar, where they're different, and they have many similarities, and which interest me a great deal.
Well, maybe we need a kind of a brief history of Buddha. I mean, we've been talking about Jesus, we understand Christianity, all of the Christmas celebrations, Easter, the baptism of Jesus, all these kind of things, but just give a little brief overview of the life of Buddha. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Buddha's actual name, Buddha, like Christ, is only a title.
Oh, okay.
And Christ actually means the anointed one, and Buddha means the awakened one.
Okay.
So his real name was Siddhartha Gautama, and he was born in Nepal, near the border of what is today northern India. It's interesting, he had a miraculous birth like Jesus, similar I should say. It was miraculous, and she had a dream, his mother had a dream at night that a white elephant had entered her side.
Oh.
And what happened is sometime after that she gave birth to the Buddha, actually hanging from a tree with her hands, so the gravity gave birth. And so the baby actually came out of her side because that's where the
Elephant had
penetrated her. And she dies a week later, but upon birth it said that Buddha was already walking and talking.
Oh my goodness.
So, the seers say that he will either be a great king or the one who will show the way to enlightenment. And his father is a great king in the country they live in, and he is determined that his son is going to be a great king too. He doesn't want him to be some wandering holy man. So anyway, what he does is he gives him a lavish everything he could possibly want when he was growing up, and sheltered him from the outside world. So he just had every pleasure. He gave him a wife at the age of 16, who was his cousin, Yasodhara, and they have a son named Raula, which actually means fetter.
Fetter?
Fetter.
Oh.
Like the old ball and chain.
Oh.
And you'll see why that happens later.
Oh.
So anyway, what happens, he lives in this house and all this, but that's actually a palace with all this extravagance and everything and pleasure and everything. But he's starting to get a little nervous about what's really out there. And he's nearly 29 years old, and he's never been outside the gates of the palace. So he decides he's going to go out, and he has a servant sneak him out. And they go into the city outside, and he sees four things that change his life. The first thing he sees is an old man. He's never seen an old man before. His father's sheltered him from that.
His father wasn't old?
I don't know. Maybe he looked really young. I don't know. But he sheltered him that because old age suggests impermanence. That nothing stays the same and everything. And then the next thing he sees is a sick man at the side of the road. And he's like asking the servant, "What's that?" And, "Well, that's sickness, we all get sick sometime." And he's, doesn't know that. And then they come a procession, as they do in India, of someone who's died, and they carry it out on like a stretcher, the dead body, and everyone pays homage as they take him to the burning area. And he sees this, and this totally throws him for a loop. He's never seen anyone dead before. And he says, "What is that? What's happened?" And he says, "That's death. That's what comes upon us all." And he's really uncomfortable. And the fourth thing he sees is an ascetic, a wandering holy man. And he's never seen that before. And he says, "What's that?" And when the guy tells him he's a wandering holy man, he decides that's what he's got to do. He's got to find out the answer, to find out a way out of suffering. And so after that, at the age of 29, in the middle of the night, he says goodbye to his wife and to his son, Bahula, which means a fetter. And I think that's just a poetic way of saying that the son was one of the things that was holding him back, So anyway, the gatekeeper takes him again out in the middle of the night, I was saying at midnight, and he takes him and just dumps him off in the forest, jungle forest. And he goes back to break the news to the palace that he's gone and he's not coming back. And he shaves his head, takes off his royal robes, and just puts on some rag clothes, and spends the next 6 years trying to find enlightenment. And he does it a number of ways. First he tries to study with a Hindu teacher, and he studies Hindu philosophy and gets to the point where he thinks he's learned all he needs to know about Hindu philosophy. And then he bumps into this band of 5 wandering ascetics. Ascetics are people that give up the pleasures of the flesh. They fast, they don't have sexual relations and all these different things. They give up the flesh totally in their devotion to God. And so he starts following these other 5 ascetics, and they go together, and they get to the point where they are fasting so much that he is living on just 6 grains of rice a day.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And so anyway, at that point, he meets a young girl in a village who has a bowl of rice, and she offers him the bowl of rice, and he eats it. The ascetics all leave. They think he's a sellout, because he's 80. But he just came to the point of saying, "I'm not getting any more enlightened by starving myself, and I'm definitely not getting rid of suffering.
Right.
I'm causing
Suffering
myself
more.
more suffering."
Yeah.
So he says, this does it. He sees this fig tree, and he sits under it and says, "I'm not leaving this spot until I'm enlightened." And so at that point, Mara is the devil in Hinduism.
Okay.
And Mara starts tempting him and scaring him and trying to get him off the path. And he sends his 3 daughters who tempt him, but he's not moved. Then he sends an army of demons who are shooting arrows at him, but when they come to him, they fall like flowers to the ground and everything. And then Mara finally says, "Who says that you're worthy of becoming enlightened?" And he puts his hand down on the ground, says that the earth bears witness. The very earth bears witness, and when he says this, the earth shakes and everything, and he receives enlightenment and becomes the Buddha, which simply means one who's awake, the one who is awake. So anyway, that's basically the story. He starts his ministry sometime later, a number of weeks later, and he's 35 years old at the time when this begins, when he's enlightened. And he does his first teaching at a place called the Deer Park, which is not far from the Ganges River. And of all things, the 5 ascetics that left him are his first students.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So they recognized his enlightenment
Right.
then.
Right.
I wonder if he glowed or anything
Yeah.
to show that he was enlightened. Interesting that they recognized that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Huh. Well, how about some teachings of the
Okay,
Buddha?
well,
Do you have some?
There's two basic teaching. That there's many schools of Buddhism, as there are many schools of Christianity, and but they all hold these 2 truths. I mean, you could say that these are the core truths of Buddhism, and they're known as the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The 4 Noble Truths are what the Buddha realized in his awakening. The first Noble Truth was that suffering is universal. No one gets off this planet without suffering. And he was trying to find the way to put an end to suffering for people. So the second was that suffering must have a cause. It always does, right? I mean, if someone stabs you, that's suffering. Even if you get COVID, you're suffering. But he says actually suffering basically is caused by selfish craving and clinging. We're always wanting to hang on to something. Like if you're sick, you want to hang on to your health, and you want to feel good. You don't want to feel lousy. But, it cycles through that. And then, anyway, he sees that the way out of all that is through the Eightfold Path, which is a certain way of living. And it includes a number of ways of looking at the world and living in the world. And I'll just run through them real quick. Don't have time to explain everything. But the first one is having the right views or right understanding of things. Secondly, having the right intent when we do things. 3, the right speech when we talk to people. And then 4, right conduct. And when they talk of conduct, they're talking about things like not killing, not stealing, not lying, not being sexually immoral, and not partaking of intoxicants. Then they say right livelihood, meaning you can't be doing jobs that are not doing good in the world. You can't be a gun salesman or a liquor store owner and be a Buddhist, Then they talk about right effort, right mindfulness, and then what most people know is right meditation, because most people think of Buddhism as the main practices of meditation. And finally, Buddha, Jesus we know died on a cross, being crucified. How the Buddha died, he died at the age of 80 of food poisoning.
He lived a nice long time.
Yeah, he did. And how he died was he was invited into a woman's house to eat, an older woman, and it turned out she gave him pork and it was rancid. And rather than say, not accept the food. He ate
And
it.
insult her.
Right, he ate it anyway.
And he kind of knew.
Yeah, he kind of knew.
Uh,
And, but I think he was giving an example to his disciples, because both he and Jesus, as you'll see in the class, said, eat, when you go into a town, eat what is set before you,
uh-huh.
to not insult the people that you're visiting, you know. So anyway, and his last words were, be a light unto yourself.
And so a lot of times we see nice, fat, jolly Buddhas. Is that a good representation
Oh,
of
not at all.
this original Buddha?
The original, the fat Buddhas are other Buddhas, the most famous being Maitreya. His name was Buddha Maitreya, and he is a Buddha to come. He's not come here yet, but they have many statues of him, and oftentimes he's a patron of children, and sometimes you'll see him even with little kids all over him.
Because he looks so jolly and
Yeah,
happy and
and
everything.
everything
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
Yeah,
But it sounds like the original Buddha was
not.
kind of skinny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the skinny tide. So.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, would you like to share anything else?
Yeah, I
close?
just want to close with this. Marcus Borg, who is a gospel scholar, a Christian scholar of the Gospels, wrote recently for me, not recently for everybody else, but he wrote a book called Buddha and the Christ. Well, it's actually entitled Jesus and Buddha, the Parallel Sayings, where he looks at things in the Gospels and compares them with things that Jesus has said. And he wrote, quote, both Jesus and the Buddha offered a similar diagnosis of the typical human condition: blindness, anxiety, grasping, self-preoccupation. And then he writes that the solution is in seeing, letting go, and dying. All that we have now in Christianity and Buddhism, he said, come from the direct experience of its founders. Whereas many sects have been formed over the ages, which multiply by dividing over doctrinal issues, what the Buddha and the Jesus taught was an experience that they had and tried to pass on to others.
Mm-hmm. Well, I invite people to come and take a look at both of the lives of Jesus and Buddha, see the comparisons, the similarities, the differences. And remember, every Wednesday at 5:30, Unity of Auburn, 1212 High Street. You're welcome to come. There's no charge. Thank you, Rick, for your explanation of our classes, and we hope to see everyone on Wednesday.